February 4, 2015 began like any other ordinary morning in Taipei. Traffic was steady, the sky was clear, and inside Zhongshan Airport, passengers prepared for TransAsia Airways Flight 235, expecting nothing more than a short 35-minute journey to Kinmen. No turbulence, no complexity, no reason to imagine anything unusual. This was a routine regional flight flown hundreds of times before. The aircraft for today's flight, registered B22816, was an ATR 72-600, one of the newest turboprops in the world at the time. It had been delivered to TransAsia in April 2014, making it less than a year old at the time of the crash. The plane had accumulated only about 1,600 flight hours, a tiny number compared to the tens of thousands that most commercial aircraft accumulate over their lifetime. It was considered modern, efficient, and technologically advanced for its time. Almost no one at the airline imagined that this particular aircraft would become the subject of global scrutiny. 3 pilots occupied the cockpit that morning. Captain Liao Xian-song, age 42, was a pilot in command. He had 4,914 total flight hours, but only 250 hours on the ATR 72-600, the newest variant. He had previously flown the earlier ATR 500 series, but transitioning to the new -600 model required new training. His records later revealed a worrying detail. He had struggled in simulator checks involving engine failures. In fact, he had failed the very scenario more than once. The airline documented this. However, he remained in active service. Beside him sat First Officer Liu Shangxian, age 45. He actually had more total flight experience than the captain, around 6,922 hours, with over 3,100 hours on the ATR aircraft. He had experience, familiarity, and a calm reputation. But as first officer, he was not the one making the final decisions that morning. Additionally, on board was a third pilot. A flight trainee, Hung Ping-chong, age 63, occupied the jump seat. He was observing to gain operational experience. Although he had substantial time as a military and civilian pilot, he was not actively manipulating the controls at the time of the accident. His presence added another dynamic in the cockpit. 3 people, 3 levels of authority, something that has complicated decision-making in other incidents throughout aviation history. Together, these 3 men would face a scenario that demanded absolute clarity. But just 23 seconds after takeoff, the calm inside the cockpit was shattered. One of the warning systems triggered, indicating the right engine, engine number 2, was losing power. It wasn't dramatic failure. There was no fireball or explosion. In fact, many aircraft experience a single engine loss and continue flying safely. But this moment required precision, clarity, and strict adherence to procedure. The aircraft could easily have returned for an emergency landing if everything had gone right. Instead, confusion began to take over. Inside the cockpit, the captain reacted quickly. Too quickly. Believing the left engine was the one failing, he pulled back the throttle on engine number 1, the only engine that was still functioning normally. The ATR suddenly found itself with almost no usable thrust from either engine. The aircraft began to lose speed, and once speed drops below a critical point, even a perfectly functional plane becomes aerodynamically unstable. Warning alarms erupted. The stick shaker activated, signaling an impending stall. The aircraft was climbing but slowing rapidly. The first officer noticed something was wrong and questioned the captain's decision. But by then, so much power had already been pulled that the situation was becoming irreversible. The aircraft was now barely staying in the air. Meanwhile, down on the ground, Taipei continued moving through its day, unaware of what was happening above. Drivers crossed the Nanhu Bridge, a busy elevated roadway spanning the Keelung River. Among them was a taxi driver whose dashcam would unintentionally record one of the most shocking aviation clips ever seen. As Flight 235 descended through the low skyline, the aircraft appeared sideways in the dashcam's frame. It wasn't flying so much as gliding nose up, desperately trying to stay aloft. Its left wing dipped and then dipped again, coming dangerously close to the buildings and the cars below. And then, in a single unforgettable moment, the aircraft's left wing struck the side of the bridge. It sliced through the edge barrier, clipped the front of a passing taxi, and tore itself apart as the aircraft rotated violently before crashing into the Keelung River. What was once a routine morning flight had collapsed into chaos in front of thousands of unsuspecting commuters. The footage spread around the world within hours. People were stunned, not only by the crash itself, but by the eerie clarity of the final seconds. Rescue teams arrived almost immediately. Large pieces of the fuselage were still floating above the river's surface, while other sections had sunk into the cold, muddy water. Passengers were trapped in their seats. Some were unconscious, others desperately trying to hold on to any floating debris. Out of the 58 people on board, only 15 were pulled out alive. As investigations began, the dashcam footage alone couldn't tell the full story. The black boxes, however, revealed every detail with painful clarity. Engine number 2 had suffered a sudden loss of power shortly after takeoff. The warnings were clear, the instruments were clear. Yet inside the cockpit, the crew misidentified the failed engine and shut down the wrong one. With no effective thrust from either engine, the aircraft stalled and lost lift. The pilots attempted to restart the functioning engine, but by the time they realized the mistake, there wasn't enough altitude or time left to recover. The crash shocked the aviation world. Regulators across Asia tightened screening and training standards. TransAsia grounded all ATR pilots for retesting, and several failed the checks. The airline, already under pressure, eventually shut down entirely the following year. The footage of Flight 235 became part of safety courses and aviation classrooms around the world, a stark reminder of how quickly a misunderstanding can escalate into a disaster. Flight 235 will always be remembered not just because it crashed, but because the world saw it happen. The video captured the vulnerability of flight in a way that no report or diagram ever could. It forced investigators, airlines, and the public to confront what really happened in those 2 minutes and 20 seconds after takeoff. Today, the footage remains difficult to watch, not because of the shock factor, but because of the awareness that this tragedy was preventable. Behind every frame is the story of a mistake that grew too large, too fast, and cost too many lives. If you want more investigation breakdowns like this, cases where footage, data, and evidence reveal the story behind disasters, make sure to subscribe to the Evidence Room and let me know which case you want me to break down next. And with that, I'll see you all in the next video.